Once again, it is AGHORA 2, Kundalini, by Robert Svoboda. We have found ourselves at the final chapter entitled Gurus and Disciples. It is a long chapter. I'm going to do half of this today, then I will do half of it the next time, and there also is the appendix that we have to go over with a little bit of information and a lot of illustrations, and that'll be interesting too. So yeah, let's do this, boys. Got K98 in the chat. What up, bruh? K98, my friend, is going to be doing his own readings, his own audiobook nonsense. Feel free to drop the links to wherever you're doing that in the chat. The Twitch links, the D-Live links, whatever you got. And if you're on D-Live, go follow K98. Click that shit. Follow him. Gurus and Disciples. A pleasing routine developed when Vimalananda visited Puna's Irani colony. I would come over early to help prepare lunch, and then would go off to college in the afternoon. In the evenings, we would go to the stables to visit his four-legged children. And on race days, I would accompany him into the stands at the racecourse. After returning home, we would sit together until late at night, when he discoursed on spiritual subjects. One night, we were sitting in Chotu, sitting with Chotu, one of Vimalananda's oldest friends, and with Sardar Dengal, the scion of a noble family of Pune. Vimalananda decided to have some drinks, and though he usually permitted his friends to drink with him, this time he told everyone, "Please, I'm in a different mood tonight, and I want to drink alone. You can give me company next time." "Ha," said Chotu. "What do you think? Have I not lived with you day and night for 8 years? Have we not always eaten and drunk together? If you were going to drink tonight, I am going to accompany you." "Listen," said Vimalananda, "don't insist. If you do drink, I will not be responsible for what might happen to you." "Leave off," said Chotu airily. "You were just saying that because you know I can drink you under the table without any difficulty. I am also going to drink." And he incited Sardar Dengal to drink as well. "I warned you," was Vimalananda's reply, and I poured the scotch. At his insistence, I gave them only half a drink each, although both these gentlemen measured their capacity in pints and quarts. After these particular drinks, they were blind drunk. Chotu vomited all over himself and made a mess of the room before falling flat on his back in bed unconscious, leaving his grumbling wife to clean up behind him. I was assigned the task of dealing with Sardar Dengal. It took me half an hour to get him out the door and another half hour to steer him back to his home. Vimalananda enjoyed the whole spectacle immensely. When Chotu came to, he started to abuse Vimalananda roundly, and this caused Vimalananda to break into fresh peals of laughter. "Please abuse me some more," he told Chotu. "I expect it from you. I love to play with my children," he said, turning to me. "And they love to play with me. It is a mutual bondage of affection." "I love to play with my children," he went on, "but they should do as they are told," looking pointedly at Chotu, who smiled broadly and foolishly. "Have you forgotten the story of Shankar Pala?" We all leaned closer to listen to Vimalananda, while Chotu, who obviously knew the story, said nothing but continued to grin as if he had lost the ability to comprehend human speech. "Once," Vimalananda began, "there was a wrestling club presided over by an old wrestler who was also a spiritual guru. His favorite among his many pupils was a shopkeeper, not because the shopkeeper was a good wrestler, but because of a past karmic relationship. The shopkeeper, however, thought the guru loved him because he was the best pupil. The shopkeeper was always pestering his guru to let him fight a very eminent wrestler of the area. The guru knew his child was no match for the bigger man, but he also wanted to fulfill his disciple's desires, so one day he called the boy to him and said, 'What makes you think you will be able to beat a professional wrestler?' The shopkeeper said, 'Well, I know that I am your best pupil, so that gives me confidence. I also know he will give me a lot of trouble, though, because he eats a whole goat every day. The guru said, so what? Do one thing. Follow him out into the jungle in the morning and see how much he shits. The shopkeeper started to object, but the guru told him forcibly, now don't argue. If you want me to help you, do as I say. Unwillingly, he did so and came back the next day to report to his guru. About 2 pounds. Then his guru said to him, you have nothing to worry about. He eats a whole goat, but he can't digest it. You have my permission to fight this big lug. On the day of the match, just before the bout, the young shopkeeper did a full prostration to his guru, as is customary, and as the guru lifted him up from the floor, he picked up a piece of shankarpala, a type of sweet, blew on it while repeating a mantra, and put it into the shopkeeper's mouth. The boy bounded out into the ring. The two wrestlers shook hands and began to fight. Within seconds, the shopkeeper grabbed his opponent's leg, brought him down, and pinned him. He was so elated he began to dance, but his guru shouted at him, hey, you rascal shopkeeper, sit down! Why are you dancing? It is the Shankarpala which is really dancing. Then the shopkeeper remembered himself and prostrated again to his guru to thank him for the loan of Shakti. All of us listening realized that this story was aimed at Mr. Chotu and his prowess with the bottle, and we had another laugh at Chotu's expense. Vimalananda then decided to let Chotu off the hook and changed the subject. Even my junior guru Maharaj, who is very strict, loves to play about. Back during the time I owned a dairy in Borivali, he once came to visit Bombay, and my manager, Vasudev Pansikar, who we called Vasu, came to meet him. Vasu was a good singer of devotional songs, and after singing a few, he invited Guru Maharaj out to visit the dairy. Chotu here, who lived with me out at Borivali then, is my witness. Do you remember Chotu? Chotu, one of the most genial of men, smiled as he remembered Junior Guru Maharaj and nodded his assent. Guru Maharaj smiled at Vasu's invitation and told him, of course I'll come, but you have to catch hold of me. Vasu didn't think much of this, but late that night, Guru Maharaj came to the dairy and strolled through. Vasu saw him and tried to catch him, but Guru Maharaj was moving too quickly and disappeared. Or at least that is what Vasu told us the next day. I didn't believe him because Guru Maharaj had been sitting with us all during the time he was supposed to have been at the dairy. I told Vasu that without proof, no one would believe him. Vasu said to Guru Maharaj, if you came to the stables, and you were also here all the time, you must have come in your subtle body, and that is why you couldn't be caught. Guru Maharaj said, all right, just to prove to you I was there, I will come again. This time be prepared. Vasu replied, but none of this subtle body business, you must come in your physical body. Guru Maharaj agreed. Get some nicotine in me. I am missing my vape, I'll tell you what. How many weeks has it been since I fucking smoked or vaped? Too many. 2 weeks? Too fucking many. This time, Vasu prepared a reception for Guru Maharaj. He marshaled together all the cowherds, armed them with sticks and ropes, and surrounded the corrals with thorns and barbed wire, so that once anyone got in, there would be no way for them to get out again. Late the next night, while everyone was on guard, Guru Maharaj appeared. And though all the cowherds strove their mightiest, he eluded all of them. They drove him toward the barbed wire and thorns, but he walked right through the barrier. The barbed wire broke when he touched it. This was too much for Vasu. He and several cowherds immediately came to where I was staying. There was Guru Maharaj, chatting quietly with my friends. He had not left my sight all day long. I wanted to make sure he didn't try any funny tricks. Vasu said, all right, so he didn't catch you again this time. How can we catch you when you come in your subtle body, which is ethereal and gives us nothing to hold on to? Guru Maharaj called him over and showed him the skin on his arm. There were thorns in it, the same kind of thorns that the barrier had been made of. I kept my side of the bargain, and here is my proof, he said. I can't help it if you couldn't catch me. How Guru Maharaj could have two physical bodies in two different places at once is something I cannot understand, but it happened. We all knew that he understood how it could be. I asked, "What were the sticks and ropes for?" Chotu answered, "To tie Guru Maharaj up and give him a good beating as a welcome." I said, thinking of Guru Maharaj's august personage. How could Vasu or anybody else dare to lay a finger on Guru Maharaj? Chotu smiled again, this time at my foolishness, and Vimalananda said, "Well, Guru Maharaj had challenged him. What was he supposed to do? Just lie down and let Guru Maharaj walk over him? Besides, did anyone catch Guru Maharaj? The old man knows how to take care of himself." "It's just the idea," I replied. "A disciple has every right to test a guru," said Vimalananda vehemently. "Look how Chotu just tried to test me. And he isn't even my disciple. But then the disciple or the child had best be ready to be tested in return. That is how it has always been. First, you test the guru to see if he or she is right for you. Then the guru will test you to find out what you are fit to learn and what you deserve to learn." Indeed, even in the Ayurvedic texts, a student is advised to first test a prospective guru thoroughly, and only when he is satisfied with the guru's capabilities should he submit his name as a candidate for discipleship. Then the guru gets his turn to test. A guru has to test his disciples, and if he is a good guru, he will test the disciple until the disciple's resistance is completely broken. Your guru is trying to teach you to efface your ego, to disengage your consciousness from the limitations Kundalini has imposed on herself by becoming embodied. Only when your ego is humbled can you learn. The guru is like a gardener, and the disciples like flowers. The flowers may be beautiful, but they shouldn't get a swelled head over their own so-called importance. When your guru ignores or insults you, he is only testing to see how far your ego has been effaced. Never get angry in return. Just keep quiet and see how you are benefited. I love my mentors, but they play hard. Much too hard for most people today. I remember a good saint who once ran afoul of my senior Guru Maharaj. This saint was called Juwala Sai, the lice-covered saint, because his body was covered with thousands and thousands of lice and other tiny insects. Every day he would carefully remove the insects from all over his body, talk to them, play with them, and then carefully replace them. One day, Bapu, my senior Guru Maharaj, happened to meet Juwala Sai, and Juwala Sai smiled at him. An instant later, the smile left Juwala Sai's face, and there were tears in his eyes. He begged for forgiveness, and even stood on a hot road for hours, burning his feet, but nothing doing. Bapu said to me later, "How could he afford to show me his teeth?" I obviously didn't understand, so Vimalananda explained. It is traditionally impolite to smile and show someone your teeth. When Juwala Sai smiled at Bapu, it was a challenge to Bapu. It was tantamount to saying, "See what a fine level of spirituality I have achieved." Bapu had compassion for this fellow, and so, in a trice, he stole all of his Shakti. Juwala Sai immediately realized what had happened, and so he tried to placate Bapu, but to no avail. "So then what happened?" I asked. "What happened? Nothing happened. Juwala Sai had to start over again from the beginning. Eventually, Bapu will have to do something nice for him. That's the law of karma, but Bapu is in no hurry." "It hardly seems fair," I protested. "Fair?" It was growing late, and Vimalananda was tiring of my refusal to see his point. What would you know about what is fair when it comes to people like Bapu? If Juwala Sai had been really advanced, he should have been able to recognize that Bapu was infinitely more powerful than he. Then he would not have tried to show off, and he would still be happily playing with his lice today. You talk about fair because you still have a bee in your bonnet. You still haven't lost this filthy Western attitude that you deserve to be taught simply because you are fortunate enough to run across someone who can teach you. Unfortunately, most Westerners have no patience. Your culture teaches that all desires should be immediately gratified. You see a girl you like and you go up to her and say, "Hey, how about a nice screw?" No romance, no mystery, no excitement. Sex is a natural function, say the scientists, and that is what you have made of it. In the West, sex is now on the level of any other bodily function. Whether you feel the need to relieve yourselves, you do. Whenever you feel the need to relieve yourselves, you do. And you think the spiritual urge can be gratified in the same way. No wonder you people get only fake gurus. You cannot buy a real guru. If you try to purchase him or her, you will get a nice kick on your behind. You'll be thrown out. If a real guru sees that his child is becoming impatient for knowledge, that guru will deliberately delay to teach the child a lesson. If the child loses his patience and storms off, well, why should the guru care? One less burden for him. Of course, Westerners are not entirely to blame, Vimalananda continued, calming somewhat. Our friend from Germany, who said that India is exporting godmen, is right, you know. We export them to the West, where they steal money from people who come to them for knowledge. But the Westerners, and particularly the Americans, are partly to blame. Because they think they can buy everything, including spirituality. When something cannot even be spoken, how can it be bought? This is why Westerners are not being taught the true things. They only get false gurus. Only a false guru will agree to teach someone in return for money. And they are not unique in this, of course. Rich people in every country, including India, think that because they feed, clothe, and house their guru, that they are headed for heaven. It is not like that at all. A teacher can point the way, but he can't do your work for you. But if the disciple refuses to listen, and why should he if he has purchased and now possesses the guru? What can the guru do about it? All he can practically do is refuse to teach, but it takes guts to turn down all that easy money. The knowledge I am trying to give you, I gained after a lot of difficulty. Even if I could sell this knowledge to you, which I can't, the price would be so high that you would not be able to pay it. How can you put a price on the decades I've spent in smashans? Besides, a parent never expects money from a child, unless they are not true parents, but merely procreators, like animals. I treat you as my son, Robbie. After I have some drinks, this feeling is magnified immensely, and I feel there is so much I want to teach you. But you should be ready to learn it, and Ma should be ready to teach it. You know that the truth cannot be expressed in words. If it could be, it wouldn't be true. I can only use words to point out the truth and other methods to transmit the knowledge directly, without your even being aware of it. This is the way a gift should be given, but I need your cooperation in order to give it. That's interesting. That is just like a conversation that me and K98 had recently. To a T. Americans need to stop trying to possess saints and sadhus and look for spiritual masters who will possess them instead. Only when you surrender everything to your guru, including especially your acquisitive nature, can you ever hope to progress. The Americans are the ones who can do it. They are interested in reality. I hate to say it, but most of today's Indians are cowards. The legacy of 1,000 years of servitude to the Muslims and the Europeans. We Indians need to relearn this attitude of mind from the Americans, and they need to come to us, to some of us, for spirituality. I began to feel a little distressed, not because he was upbraiding Americans, but because he still considered me so much of an American. He saw this, and said to the others in the room, referring to me, I know he may not like what I have to say, but I'm very blunt. I can't be sugar-coated. Quinine? Quinine? I don't know what that word is. I can't be sugar-coated quinine. With that, he dismissed me for the night. I kept quiet. The next time the subject came up was in Bombay, when one of Vimalananda's boys, who had been studying astrology for a few months, dropped by to ask some questions. The familiarity with which he asked me... Let's try that again. The familiarity with which he asked made me remember the episode of Juwala Sai, and in fact, Vimalananda told him, as he sat expecting to be patted on the back, "Please, study for 12 years and then come back and discuss astrology with me. Astrology cannot be learned overnight. You know, I thought you were mature, since you are physically almost as old as I am. But I see now that you are still in your puppy stage. When a dog is small, it bites its mother playfully. Biting is an inborn trait in dogs. After it grows older, it bites everyone else. But when it is a puppy, it only has strength enough to bite its mother. The mother doesn't mind a bit. She knows it's her own puppy, and she allows it to do as it pleases. It is no more polite to call someone a dog in India than it is elsewhere, so clearly Vimalananda was aiming to shock. Then, as his last sentence had promised, he showed his compassion. If you were to go to a sadhu, he would say, "First, become my disciple, and then I will teach you. I don't want any disciples. I want to remain a disciple to my dying day. And I don't mind your trying to impress me with your knowledge, though I am not in the least impressed. But if you try to show off in front of someone else, you may be humiliated. So please be careful. That is my advice to you." The budding astrologer was ashamed of himself and asked for forgiveness, but Vimalananda replied, "Forgiveness for what? The essence of motherliness is forgiveness, no matter what the child does." After the man left, Vimalananda went on. Like most people nowadays who study a little bit of a subject and become experts, this fellow thought he knew quite a bit. I knew he was trying to show off his knowledge by the questions he asked and the way in which he asked them. If I were a sadhu, I would have treated him roughly, shouting at him, and upbraiding him for being cheeky so that he would never do this sort of thing again. Because I treat him as my child, I can't do that. But I can't let him get away with it either. So I had to be blunt. It hurt him, I know. But better he should be hurt a little bit now and learn his lesson, than to have someone else burst his bloated balloon later, which might have hurt him a lot. Suppose a surgeon sees that he needs to operate in order to cure a certain disease. If the patient says to him, "Oh no, don't operate, it will hurt me a lot," will the surgeon start to feel sorry for the patient and think, "No, I mustn't operate. How could I cause him any pain?" Never. Not if he is a real surgeon. A real surgeon will cut, if he knows that is what the patient needs, because he knows that the end result for the patient, which is freedom from the pain of the disease, is worth the little bit of pain that it takes to achieve it. I remembered his recent bluntness in Pune. I have never been, and never will be, a teacher. When you try to teach, you usually end up cheating yourself. For one thing, most people are motivated by idle curiosity rather than a sincere thirst for knowledge. I have no time to waste my breath on people who want to know whether or not God exists. For those who believe in God, no explanation is necessary. For those who don't believe in God, no explanation is possible. That, I think, is an extremely important point that I have found myself, that's a conclusion I've come to. When you're talking to someone who doesn't believe in God, or doesn't believe in whatever your metaphysics, whatever you believe in, and you try to explain it to them, you're talking to a brick wall. And, just like what I always said was that to prove God's existence to someone who believes in God is the easiest thing in the world, and to prove God's existence to someone who doesn't believe is impossible. And that's exactly what's being said here. I will never claim to be a god or a prophet of God, or even a guru, as so many claim to be today. To be a guru, you have to say, "I know, and I can teach you." But if I say that, well, I'm finished. I can never learn anything else. I have to shut myself off from anything new. If I remain a student all my life, though, I will always be ready to learn new things. I am nothing. The sort of nothing which has everything contained within it. That is the kind of nothing to become. The nothing which occurs when Kundalini leaves her dalliance with samsara and opens you to the universe of all possibilities. Her dalliance, that threw me off. Once again, another word that I don't recognize at all. That is the kind of nothing to become. The nothing which occurs when Kundalini leaves her dalliance with samsara and opens you to the universe of all possibilities. There are plenty of people around who think they are gurus, and that they should try to enlighten the world. One of them is a famous Swami from Bombay, who has centers all over the place, in so many countries. I invited him to my house some years ago, just to see what he was about. When he arrived, I offered him refreshment, as one does to any guest who comes, but he refused, saying, "I never take any nourishment outside my ashram." All right, I thought to myself, if you were being strict, I will be strict in return. Then he asked me, "Are you following some yoga?" I pretended innocence and said, "No, Maharaj, I am only an ordinary man. Yoga is too far away from me." He said, "You know, I am having my discourse in the Bhagavad Gita at the Oval. You should come and listen to them. You will be enlightened." This was too much. I said to him, "Maharaj, the Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Krishna, who was God incarnate, to Arjuna, who was a great yogi. Both of them were aspects of rishis, in fact. You are not Krishna, and your listeners are not Arjuna. How can you expect that the kind of jnana which is in the Gita can be passed from you to them by discourse? Not only that, you go day after day to the same place and speak the same things over and over again. The Gita was a spontaneous outpouring of joy from Krishna's heart. Arjuna was his beloved spiritual child, and he had such a desire to make Arjuna understand that he couldn't control himself. The Gita came from Krishna's lips spontaneously. Even he was not aware of what was happening. That is why it is so great. And when it was all over, Arjuna said to Krishna, "Lord, I have forgotten what you taught me. Can you tell me again?" Krishna replied, "No, that time is past. It cannot be recovered." Which means that the Gita could be only transmitted between its original author and hearer, who were both rishis at a certain time, because afterward that spontaneous outburst was gone. Now, Maharaj, how can you think that you are doing any good to anyone by babbling on about the Gita? Well, he got wild, of course, and told me, "You are an atheist. I won't stay here any longer," and stormed out. As he was leaving, I said, "Maharaj, the scriptures say, you must control your anger." That only made him wilder. Such are the sadhus we have nowadays. Only rarely will they recognize their mistakes. I don't mind meeting anyone who has a sincere desire to learn. I'm ready to teach anyone who is ready to learn. And as long as someone comes to me with humility, I will do anything for them. But how many have real interest in spirituality, and how many have the patience necessary to wait for those spontaneous outbursts to happen when transmission can really take place? And besides, how many could endure learning with me? When I teach, I am ruthless. No compassion. You must succeed or you'll die. If I were a sadhu, Robbie, well, I love you, but I would rip you to shreds before I taught you anything. That is the best way. Then there is no fear of backsliding. As it is, I am a householder, so you are receiving knowledge which with much less effort on your part. I will never have disciples, only children, because that is the way a real guru should treat a disciple, as a spiritual son or daughter. I can't afford to be as strict as a sadhu because I treat you as my son, and no parent ever wants to see his or her children suffer. I am willing to suffer on your behalf. In return, I expect you to act in a certain way. And you do. I appreciate that. The play that goes on between the guru and the disciple is one that's very interesting to me. And when I was younger, I would read these books and be like, I wish I could have a teacher like that. I wish I could have run into someone. Like, you think it's almost impossible living in the West. But then as I read this, I realize I did have those people, one in particular, who, and like when he's talking about testing your guru and then your guru testing you, that's exactly what I did. When I met someone who claimed to have knowledge, I was like, prove it to me. Prove to me that you have something that nobody else has. And that's what they did. And then from then on, I was the one being tested. So, he concluded, I'm afraid you have fallen in with a madman. Madmen can be dangerous. Look out. Think twice before continuing to stay with me. He laughed, and I grinned in reply, happy to be exposed to his sort of danger. I told him, hopefully my ego will come sufficiently under control so that I don't end up like Jwala Sai. Vimalananda shook his head and said, poor fellow, he didn't realize who he was tangling with. Bapu is terribly strict about things like respect. One day he and I were sitting around here in Bombay when someone told us of a fakir who was very ill. My mentor immediately said, take me to see him and I will cure him. He is very loving in that way. Now, I knew this fakir, and knew he was a good man, but I also knew that he was not yet ready for my senior guru Maharaj. I told my old man, don't bother, he will not see you. He became wild. As his disciple, I had no business contradicting him after all, and said, I am ready to bet that he will see me. I am a gambler, and I liked my odds, so I said, be careful, Bapu. This is Bombay. You don't know how people are here. But he insisted, and we settled on a bet. 1 betel leaf. He went to the fakir's residence and asked to see the sick man. The people there refused to let him in. He told them, look, I am a fakir myself. I want to cure him, and all sorts of other things, but they steadfastly refused. I like the bet on 1 betel leaf. I used to work for Indians, and they would always be chewing like betel nut and all sorts of weird stuff like that. I miss it. Maybe that's how I should get my nicotine. I know it's a lot cheaper. Way better than these shitty little fucking lozenges. Get some fucking betel nut, bruh. Finally, he lost his temper and said, is he God that he will refuse to see me? All right. He has a plaster on his chest right now, doesn't he? That plaster will remain on his chest until his dying day, just to remind him of the fakir he did not meet. And that actually happened that way. You know it, Robbie. You and Freddy have seen his photo with the plaster on his chest. Yes, we had. Of course, then Bapu had to come back home and pay me my betel leaf. And he doesn't like losing any more than I do. I told him, why do you become obstinate about such things? These are human beings. They can't pass the kinds of tests you dish out. Yeah, I'd always get this packet from my Indian employer. I know it was like betel nut and tobacco, and you'd put it under your lip, and it would taste like potpourri. It was dank. I think it also rots your teeth, and when you spit, it's just like red, and it stains whatever you spit on. Of course, then, Bapu had to come home and pay me my betel leaf. And he doesn't like losing any more than I do. I told him, why do you become obstinate about such things? These are human beings. They can't pass the kinds of tests you dish out. It always pays to give respect to spiritual people. Back in the time when the British ruled India, there lived an Aghori in a small hut in a small forest, on the outskirts of a small village. For some reason, the government decided to build a road right through the sadhu's little hut. When the Englishman in charge of the road gang came to evict the old man, he acted so high-handedly that the Aghori decided to teach him a lesson. He lengthened his penis, wrapped it around a nearby boulder, which must have weighed tons, and towed it in front of the machinery in use on the roadway. Then he stood back and told the Englishman, now please remove it. The Englishman, of course, thought it was some kind of trick, wrapping your penis around a rock and dragging it along. So he ordered his men to remove it. All of his men got behind it and tried to push it out of the way, but they couldn't budge it, not even an inch. Then the Englishman realized that something funny was going on, and he went to the sadhu and told him politely, "Look, I have to build this road. It is my job. If I don't do it, I'll be fired. Please help me out." The Englishman realized that something funny was going along. Yeah, dude. Dude just fucking ripped out his dong, and he made it like 10 feet long and wrapped it around the boulder. Pretty funny. It's a joke. The sadhu looked at him closely and said, "That's better. Now you are talking properly." Then he again lengthened his penis, wrapped it around the boulder, and tugged it to one side, and the road building went on undisturbed. By this time, both of us were guffawing over the vision of the hapless Englishman and the Aghori who had lassoed the boulder with his penis. After the mirth died down, Vimalananda continued, I'm glad it's not just my sick Western senses laughing about that. That is funny. That is the play. I accidentally got involved in one of these situations myself. It was in the South, and it involved a Western couple who were touring India. One day, while they were sightseeing, a wild-looking man with unkempt hair started to stare at them. This made them uneasy, and they asked him to stop. He ignored them and continued to stare, wide-eyed. This went on for some minutes until the male tourist lost his temper and spat on the man. The man, who was a sadhu, picked up the wad of spittle with his fingers, looked at it carefully, looked at the couple carefully, and then walked away. The couple thought they were rid of him. How wrong they were. Next morning, they began their day with bloody diarrhea. They tried all sorts of remedies, but nothing worked. Someone they knew me, and I was called onto the case. In the course of our talk about their health, it came out that they had spat on that sadhu. "Oh," I said, "now I get the idea. You should never have insulted him like that. No wonder he has decided to teach you a lesson. Don't worry about a thing." And I went to the smashan. The next day, they were fine again, and I warned them strictly, never ever to do anything like that again. India is a very strange and dangerous country. 2 days later, who do I see coming to visit me but the sadhu, who asked to be cured of his bloody diarrhea. I told him, "Look, you are an old man and you are supposed to be matured and mellowed. Why did you allow your mind to be disturbed by a couple of foreigners, who after all are so ignorant of our ways that they are no better than children?" He retorted, "They came to India to stare at us, and I wanted to see how they liked it when someone stared at them." I said, "Yes, but you can't just use your power on everyone who irritates you, especially when those people don't know how to fight back. Besides, they are our guests while they are here, and we have to treat them as such. Anyway, they have learned a lesson all right, and I hope you have too." He agreed that he had learned a good lesson, and we parted as friends. The unstated but clear message was of course directed at me. Watch your step here in India, lest you land in quicksand. I have always tested my gurus, you know. Only if they meet my criteria am I willing to learn from them. I have met and tested many sadhus, but most of them have been found wanting. One day, one of my friends came raving about a certain saint. What heights this man has achieved. He even talks to Lord Krishna, I said to myself. Aha, he talks to Lord Krishna. I've always been willing to meet anyone who is willing to meet me. You were supposed to take a coconut and present it at his lotus feet, and then he would tell you what you wanted to know. I didn't take any coconut, and when my turn came, he asked me where it was. I told him I had only come for his darshan, and not to ask any questions. Then he started to say, "Lord Krishna says this, and Lord Krishna says that," and I got wild. Lord Krishna indeed. I told him, "Whatever Lord Krishna may say, you had better watch out for yourself, Maharaj, because I think that within 1 month you will be trampled under the foot of an elephant." Everyone there became very angry with me, of course, but I didn't care. I was so insolent then. And besides, I was just telling the truth. My friend tried to intervene. "What are you saying? Ask Maharaj his forgiveness." That only made me wilder, and I had to leave the room. Well, it happened as I had predicted. About a month later, the sadhu was being taken out in a big procession on elephant back. Suddenly, the elephant went berserk, picked the sadhu up with his trunk, threw him to the ground, and trampled him. A horrible death. Like that, I've met so many babas and holy men. I remember a fakir who used to sit on a big cushion of rich green velvet. When I met him, I saw that he had a small spirit with him. The spirit was very unhappy because the fakir was taking a lot of work from him. I asked the spirit if he would like to be set free, and he said, "Yes, I would like to repay this fakir for all the work he has taken from me." As soon as the spirit was released, he immediately grabbed that fakir's testicles and began to squeeze. My God, what a howl that guy put up. None of the disciples could see the spirit, of course, so they didn't know what was going on, and didn't know what to do about it. As if there were anything they could do about it. His balls were squeezed mercilessly, until the next morning, when he died and became a spirit himself. My face must have hinted at disapproval, because Vimalananda continued by saying, "What should I have done? Left him as he was to create more karmas for himself, and make the spirit more miserable, so that when his end finally came, his condition would be even worse?" Since I had no answer to this, the conversation ended there. One day, Vimalananda sat me down and outlined for me his criteria for testing saints. Some people follow what is called the path of the ant in their search for God. Some people follow what is called the path of the ant in their search for God. They scurry about hither and thither, moving backwards as well as forward, taking many births to reach their goal. Those who are more determined to follow the path of the fish, swimming strongly against the current. The path of the monkey, which involves leaping from limb to limb on the tree of knowledge, is more difficult still. But the most difficult is the path of the bird, the path of we aghoras. You leap out into space, and your wings carry you to him. Of course, if your wings fail and you drop to the ground, you are finished, totally. You are dead. A monkey, at least, has branches to break his fall. A fish can rest behind a rock whenever it needs to. The path of the ant takes the longest time, but it is the most secure, because an ant has nowhere to fall. The more difficult a sadhana is, the more necessary it is to have a guru. In Kundalini Yoga, it is absolutely essential to have an expert guru. The guru is a spiritual aspirant's friend, philosopher, and guide. He guards the disciple against all dangers and ignites the internal flames which eventually consume all the limitations of the disciple's personality. You can make spiritual progress without having a guru, it is true. But if you want to reach the highest states, a guru is absolutely essential. No effort is ever lost. Even if you cannot succeed in this lifetime, your effort is right there in your bank balance, in an account that travels with you from birth to birth. It is such a wonderful account that you can never lose your passbook. The vibrations of your efforts exist indefinitely in a subtle form, so there is nothing to worry about. No matter where you end up, you'll be dragged back into your spiritual practices. All the records of your past lives are available to anyone who knows how to locate them and who can perceive their subtle sound. So your guru never has any difficulty keeping track of where you are and what you are doing, no matter how far you may stray from him. But for you to have this sort of guarantee, you have to have a real guru. Out of 1,000 sadhus today, perhaps one is genuine, because it is Kali Yuga. You will meet many sadhus, Rabi, and you will need to know how to evaluate them. You should learn to smell saints out. Yes, smell them out. They say attar can be created only when flowers are crushed. And it is the same way with a sadhu. Only after his ego has been thoroughly crushed so that his kundalini can identify with God will he be able to give a sweet smell to all who come near him. So long as he retains traces of selfishness, a stench will follow him wherever he goes. So long as your own body, your mind and body are blocked up, you'll never even be able to know what a saint is or to sniff his scent. As you purify yourself and your perception improves, you will learn more and more. This is like opening a bottle of attar in a room. After a moment or two, everyone except someone whose nose is blocked up can tell that attar is present. The least experienced person can say only attar is present. Someone with more experience can identify it more accurately. It is rose. Only an expert will recognize the fine nuances. It is Kabuli rose mixed with a little jasmine. It is the same way with saints. If you want to find out whether or not a sadhu is genuine, first go to see him, but don't ask any questions. Sit quietly and don't say much, listen, and try to keep your mind blank. If when you sit near him you find yourself forgetting the things of the world and becoming more peaceful, then he is a good saint. His halo is quieting your mind. If not, run away. Naturally, if you yourself are purified, it will be easier to know whether and how much your mind is being quieted, I observed. Naturally, once your mind becomes purified, there is no limit to what you can learn. You can know so many things about a person by simple observation. For example, check the saint's feces, like the shopkeeper who wanted to wrestle did. A real yogi excretes only an ounce, or at most a few ounces a day. Anything more indicates that he is bogus. If Jathara Agni has yielded most of its energy to Bhuta Agni, there will be very little physical digestive fire left. Yogis are disciplined by nature. A good yogi will only eat as much as he is hungry for. If he eats more than he can digest, he will have to excrete the excess, and you will be able to detect it. Or, if his bodily fire is generally weak, his assimilation will be poor, and he will excrete more than he absorbs, which suggests that his mind will be dull as his body. Like I said, I did have someone who, in retrospect, was definitely a guru of mine, in a way. Now, he wasn't Hindu, he wasn't Buddhist, it wasn't Eastern mysticism at all, none of that stuff. He taught me the Bible, how to use symbology, how to recognize prophecy and discern its meaning. But I'll say this, and one of the first things that let me know he was legitimate was, and this is why I was drawn to him, was the peace I felt in his presence. That wasn't enough. I had to demand more from him, which was when he taught me all manner of symbolism, and he taught me the meaning of the countless prophecies in the Bible, and that sort of thing. And then my life started to change for the better. And now we're talking about this checking his feces thing. While I never did that, I will tell you this, that my teacher barely ate. He ate very, very little. What he ate was quality, but it was only the bare essentials. I'm jealous of that. I eat too damn much. And it's funny too, because this was a guy who smoked a lot of ganja. When I smoke a lot of ganja, I get the munchies and I eat everything in my kitchen. Even if it's like, just like, I don't know. I'll just use everything. Just put like mustard and cheese on white bread and just eat a ton of that. Why not? Fuck it. It's 12 a.m. I'm fucking starving here. This principle makes Jain Munis easy to test because of their toilet habits. They never go outside the house to defecate. Usually, they do it on an outer balcony or somewhere like that. And they never use water to clean themselves afterwards, since water is life-giving and they regard it as sacred. So they clean themselves with a pebble or a stone and just leave the dung there for the rain to wash away. When someone told me one day that an excellent Jain Muni had just arrived in town, I first went to see his droppings, and after I saw them, I knew he would be no match for me. I went in confidently and defeated him easily at religious debate. He was actually rather dull. You can use this test for anyone. Whether or not you were able to observe a sadhu's droppings, look at his face. A good saint's face will begin to take on the form of the face of the deity he worships. You know how married couples start to look like one another after 40 or 50 years? This is the same principle. There was a sadhu in Bombay named Kamu Baba, who meditated on Sai Baba of Shirdi for so long that when you looked at him, it was just like looking at Shirdi Sai Baba. At the end of his life, my father looked almost identical to his own guru, on whom he had meditated for decades. This effect is magnified millions of times if your Kundalini has been awakened. Kundalini's power is self-identification, and she quickly takes on the form of whatever she identifies with. Sai Baba of Shirdi is another character that I would like to do more research on. He was halfway between a yogi and a fakir, halfway between Hinduism and Islam, and he's revered by both sides in India. I'd be curious what a Muslim in Saudi Arabia would think of Sai Baba of Shirdi. True saints rarely approve of having their photos taken. They don't like to be known by multitudes of people. They prefer to live alone and die alone so they can be nearer to God. Also, a photo gives a great boost to anyone who wants to self-identify with that person. Anyone who has a saint's picture can call that saint astrally and play about with him, which is all well and good, but suppose someone for some reason should hate that saint. Every time they see his photo, they will remember their hate and send reinforced negative vibrations his way, which will have unpleasant implications for the health and well-being of the poor innocent saint. Only false sadhus, who are anxious for publicity, go out of their way to be photographed. While you are busy observing the sadhu, don't forget to listen carefully to what he says. Do you remember that young woman who was born in India of Western parents? When she came of age, she decided she wanted to marry a fellow disciple of the same female guru. But when she went to ask for her guru's permission, the old woman said, "No, how can it be? You are a foreigner and he is an Indian. Such a marriage must never take place." This shows the depth of that old woman's deficiency. If she really believed herself to be the Divine Mother incarnate as she claimed, how could she discriminate between two of her children? Mustn't she treat them all equally? Her prejudice proves that she was not at all spiritually advanced. She could rightly have objected for other reasons, but not simply because of skin color. If the supposed saint you meet talks about collecting money to build ashrams and centers and so on, depart immediately. His disciples may talk about such things, I admit. Disciples are always somewhat deluded, but a real sadhu says, "Why should I bother about trying to establish something? If God wants me to have it, I will have it." This is the right attitude. It shows that the sadhu has full faith in his deity. Only if he has no faith will he try to collect money or disciples or whatever. We have a saying in Hindi, "What is the use of a flower which has no fragrance? What is the use of a beautiful face which has no one to desire it? What is the use of a fakir or sadhu who is not a giver?" Fakirs and sadhus are always givers because they have realized that everything belongs to God. How can they refuse to give to God in the form of a human being that which belongs to God? It is absolutely scandalous how many people are making money and fame for themselves off the Bhagavad Gita. I knew one Dada Maharaj who had gathered a lot of disciples for himself by his discourses on the Jananeshwari. Yeah, we'll go with that. Jananeshwari. You can be sure that a great siddha like Jananeshwari, holy crap. You can be sure that a great siddha like Jananeshwar did not write the Jananeshwari so that he could become famous. He did it so that the common people who did not know Sanskrit could hear Krishna's story in Marathi, their own language, and keep it in their hearts, and bring themselves closer to Krishna in that way. When Jananeshwar himself, that's so tough. Oh man. When Jananeshwar himself never commercialized his writing, why should anyone else do so? This Dada Maharaj was a barber who had promoted himself to religious lecturer. There is nothing inherently wrong in this, except that the Jananeshwari is actually a wonderful treatise on spiritual subjects, including Kundalini. And unless you have had personal experience in that department, you have no right to open your mouth. You certainly have no right to develop a swelled head, as this man had done. He developed such a bloated ego that one day I decided to teach him a lesson. I went to see him, and I took a dog along. When I went to him, I performed a full prostration, as I always do in front of any saint, to gauge his or her qualities. This fellow, I could tell, had achieved absolutely nothing. He started to explain something when suddenly the dog burst in, as I had planned, and ran up to him. He shouted, "Get that dog away from me!" Then I said to him, "Maharaj, you claim that you are a great man, though by pedigree you are only a barber. Be that as it may, the book on which you give lectures states clearly that a sage looks with an equal eye on a realized soul, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and an eater of dogs. Are you better than Krishna, that you were offended by a dog?" I want to notice this eater of dogs reference. I talked about that more in depth in some readings I did that somebody actually paid me for. Whew, boy, good shit. I think it's called Legends of the Dogman or something like that on my YouTube channel. youtube.com/c/yakovalive. It's in one of the playlists, Legends of the Dogman, something like that, and it talks about these dog eaters of India. Are you better than Krishna that you were offended by a dog? Then what did he say? What will he say? He had no choice but to keep quiet. There's no use in jabbering on about all these things. You need to do the sadhana and have the experience. Then you will know, and there will be no need to talk. You don't realize the truth just by thinking about it. You have to go through the grind. I think I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much for joining me. Go to yakobees.com, listen to the podcast, hit that merch tab. Patreon.com/yakovalive. If you want to come out, hang in the Discord with me and the homies, talk about spirituality, talk about history, watch movies, play video games, do all the things. I'll be back soon for the final stream of AGHORA 2 Kundalini. And then we can figure out what we're going to do next. I will catch you next time, folks. God bless.